follow indeed.
My Lords, I asked on Twitter recently the question, what do you call a corrupt far-right government that bans strikes, bans protests that are too noisy, suppresses the right to vote, gives police spies legal immunity, takes the power to make or reject laws away from Parliament and hands it to ministers? Now, I had quite a few replies on this, and most said fascism, which, of course, you know, was fair enough. But actually, there was one response that said scared. And this is a government of the rich, who are making suitcases full of money while avoiding paying their taxes, and I think they are scared. No one would, but a terrified government would keep bringing these terrible laws to your lordship's house. And the government is scared that the people on PAYE are suffering from inflation, high interest rates, and 13 years of Tory austerity are going to demand their money back. The money that was stolen with the PPE fast track and numerous other government scams that put money in the pockets of their friends while fleecing the taxpayer. Many of those on strike in the last few months have not had a proper pay rise for the last decade. And instead of their earning respect for years of being underpaid for the work they do and carrying on doing it, they're lectured on the need for further restraint by the richest Prime Minister in this country's history. Clapping doesn't pay the bills. We heard that after COVID, and it's still true. So instead of meetings and compromise, the workers are being hit with draconian laws. Ministers are being given huge powers that could see them ban strikes across 6 public services, potentially involving millions of workers. And these aren't minimal powers, and these aren't targeted powers. They are the powers of a dictatorship that can be interpreted by ministers as widely as they choose. There's no recognition, as we heard, of the life and limb provisions that are already in place during strike action, which exempt certain categories of staff from strikes where there may otherwise be a direct danger to people. And the government don't recognise existing agreements because they once again wish to invent a problem that doesn't exist in order to justify a right-wing policy that suppresses opposition. They've done it with voter ID and the clampdown on the right to protest. And of course, the Johnson government ended a ban on employment agencies supplying workers to temporarily replace striking workers. That ban had been in force since 1976, but the Tories overturned it. So what happens when teachers and nurses don't get paid enough? We get the situation we have today. People give up on public service and move to the private sector instead. The number of children packed into school classrooms goes up and the results go down. The number of NHS staff vacancies gets longer, and so do the waiting times. And those who can pay go private. Money will buy you smaller class sizes in private schools, just as money will buy you a shortcut to health care. And that's ultimately why many in this government don't want to give a pay rise that matches inflation. Austerity is a political choice. If we tax the rich, we could pay the deserving. The truth is that many in this government want public services in a permanent state of collapse because it matches their privatisation agenda. These anti-strike laws are an attempt to stop public servants from protecting our public services. I'm going to be very brief because I think a lot of people have said a lot of incredibly valuable things, mostly on this side of the chamber, obviously. There's 2 final things to say. This thing about minimum service levels, no, the noble lady Baroness Whittaker asked about that. What does that mean? I wonder what it means, because this government hasn't managed to hit a target ever since it got elected. So I can't think how they're going to manage minimum service levels. And secondly, the minister's opening, a fine opening, Minister. The public expect essential services to be there when they need them. Then why doesn't the government get round the table? Why doesn't the government negotiate? Why is it behaving like complete and utter oafs? I really hope that we can throw this out, and I'm thrilled that Labour will repeal it as soon as they get into power. That won't be too long now.
Yeah.